We're live. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Hilda Labrada Gore of the Wise Traditions podcast. And today we're at the the Weston A. Price Foundation office.
That's right.
I came in to grab some things and do some work.
And then she grabbed me.
And then I grabbed her.
I was like, okay, I'm in. We love talking about real food, the benefits of a nutrient-dense diet, and faith too.
And faith, because it all fits together.
It does. It really does.
I'm always saying that instead of looking to God just for doctrinal things and a few things, we need to look to God for everything, including bodily health and mental health, which are connected. So today's topic is fats. And I was prepared to talk with Sally Fallon Morell on fats, but we're going to put her on in January. But Hilda and I instead are going to go ahead and talk about fats in general.
Yes.
And Hilda has traveled all over the world, and she has seen what healthy people are eating in Africa and name a few countries.
Mongolia and Australia. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been powerful. So I'll interject my stories here and there as we talk about the benefits of traditional saturated fats.
Yeah. And why is everybody so afraid of saturated fats to begin with?
That's a really good question. I think we've been indoctrinated, for lack of a better word, by advertising, by the powers that be saying we need to go low fat. And we've had fears instilled in us where our instinct is to go after the things that satisfy. And haven't you heard story after story, and I've seen it in my own family too, of children craving butter and just wanting to grab the stick and eat it? That's a natural instinct. I don't think they do the same thing with margarine.
No, as a matter of fact, fake foods are not just with people, but with critters too that get into things. They don't like the fake stuff. They want the real stuff. They know. But my own Erin, who was monitoring this, my boss Erin used to walk around when she was just a toddler, chomping on a stick of butter.
And you can't eat the whole thing, obviously, because it satisfies so much. And that's one thing I think the ultra processed modern oils don't do. They don't satisfy. This is why I tell people all the time, you can eat a whole bag of taquitas or potato chips or what have you, because there's something in those oils. It doesn't tell you to stop. There's no signal to stop, where the natural fats are so satisfying that you don't need to eat as much, and you don't desire to, because it's so good.
Yeah. And also fat has a couple of primary roles. One is carrying the activator minerals, or rather vitamins, to activate minerals in our body. And another is just fuel. But when we're consuming fake fats, polyunsaturated, heart healthy oils in particular, in fact, our body doesn't burn those readily as fuel, and it tends to get stored as fat. So people who are struggling with weight issues and are consuming a lot of processed vegetable oils are really shooting themselves in the foot there too, because they're causing harm on a multiple levels. But one of those is that the body can't burn it as fat efficiently like it can natural saturated and monounsaturated fatty acids. And so it gets stored as fat. So not a great thing. And, it really ticks me off that all of these oils that are processed vegetable oils that are not traditional fats, they're touted as the heart healthy fats, where the natural God-given fats, we're told, cause heart disease. But the truth of the matter is that these fats are very acidic, and they damage the arterial wall of our blood vessels. And that, I think, is probably the biggest contributor to the plaque in the arteries. And then cholesterol, which our body needs, every cell of our body needs it, comes in as the repair mechanism, like the Band-Aid. I read something years ago. I haven't been able to find it again, but I had read something from a reputable source that they had taken scraping from a clogged artery. And they had analyzed what was in it. And in fact, cholesterol was a very small percentage.
Interesting.
And it seems to be what these researchers discovered was that it was covering up like burns on the arterial wall, like scorchings or blisters, which if you imagine you take something acidic and you put it on your skin is going to be irritated. And then we put creams and lotions on it. Well, the body does that with cholesterol.
Such a good point. Some people say
Yeah.
it's like blaming firefighters for the fire. So cholesterol comes in to help, and everyone's like, cholesterol caused this heart disease or heart damage, when no, they're the helpers.
Yes.
It was something else. I just want to say, if you look back in time, which we can only go so far back, but there was nothing but the natural saturated animal fats, or perhaps the coconut oils and the palm oil from tropical climates. And the people were hale and hearty. They weren't struggling with obesity, diabetes, heart disease. They weren't having these conditions. But it was once these oils were introduced as part of the displacing foods of modern commerce that Dr. Price mentioned, that people started to have these chronic health issues. So I think you don't need to believe everything you hear or see, definitely on the internet. And even what we're saying, take it with a grain of salt or with a bit of butter.
Both is even better.
Exactly. Look into what really you think has served humanity for millennia. And so I'm going to interject a story here, which is not my own, but I had the privilege of interviewing Gina Baker, who lives in Costa Rica. And she said, Hilda, I wanted to visit the well-known Nicoya Peninsula, which was known for being a blue zone, where people lived a very long life and they avoided meats and animal fats and so forth. She said, I wanted to see it with my own eyes and interview people myself. So she went to the Nicoya Peninsula. She found some centenarians. She really spent time with them. And she asked them, what did you cook in? And they said, basically, shh, don't tell anybody, but we cooked in lard. And the reason they were saying don't tell anybody is because they had been taught, Maureen, that lard was bad. They had also heard the education and they were embarrassed. This is perhaps why they didn't tell Dan Buettner and the other people exploring the blue zones the truth of the matter, because they knew what these people were looking for. So they kept it on the down low, but they said to her, what else would we have cooked with? That's all we had. We had the pigs. We used the whole animal. We used the lard for cooking the meat. And so it was fascinating to listen to her. And I said to her, but why? Why did the people looking into the blue zones, why didn't they see it? Number one, the people didn't want to reveal it. But number two, Gina said, people see what they want to see. And so that's why I implore you to tap into your curiosity, to your own divine discernment for figuring out what makes more sense for us to introduce these newfangled, labeled, heart-healthy, ultra-processed vegetable oils and suffer the conditions there that come from them, or to eat the foods that have served humankind since we've been on the earth. You know, it's really fascinating when you put it in that perspective.
Yeah, it's God-given versus man-created.
Yes.
Factory created. I always say man made the earth and everything in it and gave it to man in 6 days, but there were no factories. Nor were there factory farms. There was everything we needed, which included food, plant food and animal food. And I think you and I have talked before about the possibility that maybe even in the earliest days, people were consuming dairy products from sheep and goats. Don't know. There's a lot of archaeological evidence that goes as far back as archaeologists have found anything that shows that people were consuming dairy products. But certainly from a biblical perspective, at least in the days of Noah, it was the whole animal. God said to sacrifice. That's why there were 7 clean animals of every kind on the ark, not just the 2. And they sacrificed, and God told Noah and his family to eat. And they didn't eat just burgers. Can you imagine Noah and his family making burgers and fries?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't know if they brought any potatoes on board.
Yeah, I don't know.
They might have. But that leads me to some of the most traditional cultures that I visited. When I went to Kenya in 2015, I had the privilege of interviewing a Maasai warrior elder from a small village. And I asked him, what did you eat as a child? He said, whatever we could catch. So it's all the wild animals and stuff. And he said, maybe some wild honey and some fruit, but mostly it was whatever we could hunt and catch. And of course they ate the whole animal. But I said, well, how was your health? What did you do when you got sick? He said, we never got sick. And then he said, but if we felt a shiver coming on, we would drink milk from the cow, and he demonstrated drinking it straight from the udder.
Oh,
and it was still a custom when I was there, because my host, Dixon Olegisa, had, I guess they call it clabbered milk. He had put some milk in a gourd to ferment, But again, there's no talk of skimming off the fat. Fat is to be prized. In the Bible, it says that too. Like you want
Yeah.
a table laden with fat is one that means there is plenty, there's abundance. So
Yeah.
why it's been inculcated us to avoid it, I'm not sure. Maybe along a lot of mistaken or erroneous science, or
Yeah.
maybe a desire to profit on the backs of people's health, because it
Yeah.
is way cheaper to make the vegetable oils than to have people eating the on their own the fat from the animals.
Right. And then it keeps the whole medical and pharmaceutical industry profiting. Not that
Yes.
that's necessarily why. I'm very aware, as I'm sure you are, of the Ansel Keys study, the Mr. Fit study from the late 50s, in which Ansel Keys looked at men who were, he was looking at their heart health and what they were eating. And he came to the conclusion that the men um, eating a diet that had a lot of animal foods in it, including animal fats, that they were having heart attacks. But there was a lot of convoluted evidence there
Mhm.
in his entire. He came out with a hypothesis to begin with, which is what you do in a scientific
Yes.
study. But if you're an honest person, you look at all of the information, and if it doesn't prove your hypotheses, you say, "Oh, I was wrong."
Yeah.
But that's not what Ansel Keys did. And as a matter of fact, he was looking at heart disease when heart disease was a relatively new diagnosis. The first diagnosis of heart disease that I'm aware of was in the early 1920s. So this phenomenon had started to occur, and it was new.
It was rare. Yes, it was rare.
Yeah.
And now, if you see, ever since we started eating low fat and again fearing the natural saturated fats, obesity, diabetes, and heart conditions have been on the rise ever since. So
Yeah.
that's telling us something's not working.
Definitely not working right. And we should be questioning rather than just accepting what we're told. And
Mhm.
again, go back to what God gave us, what God said is good, instead of listening to man who's saying, that's not good. We can do better. Doesn't that drive you
Mhm.
nuts?
Yes, absolutely. And the saturated fats, as you were saying, have such an important role in the body. They help with the integrity of the cell membrane. And so they kind of help us stay structured throughout the body. Whereas by ingesting vegetable oils, just think about how liquidy, and actually they're rancid, but that's another story. When they
Yeah.
process them, they deodorize them and then they put that little yellow coloring in so it looks palatable. But the
Yeah.
body doesn't receive those vegetable oils well, and it contributes to the flaccidity of the cell membranes, meaning everything's more porous and loose. And you want a strong, healthy body structure for better
Yeah.
cognitive function, hormonal function, everything function.
Yeah. And of course, our brain is made up primarily of cholesterol.
Yes.
So we really need it. And every cell in our body requires cholesterol. All of our hormones are made from cholesterol. If our diet doesn't bring in enough cholesterol, our body produces more cholesterol. That
Wow.
should tell us something alone. If we
Yes.
have that mechanism built into our bodies that says we really need cholesterol, so if you don't take it in, if you don't put it in your mouth, we're going to make it.
Mhm.
And statin drugs stop that process because of the false notion that cholesterol causes heart disease. And so a statin drug works by blocking the
Mm.
body, and specifically the liver, the body's ability to process saturated fats into cholesterol. Um, and of course, if you're on a low fat diet, you're not taking in saturated fats either. So it can't make enough cholesterol. We're really here's a story I can tell. We had a dear friend years ago from our church, a sweet, fun guy, Lucky. I'll just say his name. It was Lucky. Um, Lucky grew up in West Virginia. He was one of a whole bunch of kids, and he just loved fresh raw milk. But his family had heart disease running through their,
Mm.
they would say, genes.
Mhm.
I could see at that time even that it was what they were eating. It's not genetic, doesn't mean you're
Ah,
going to have a problem. Genes have an influence, they're not the determiner. But because heart disease supposedly ran through the family, and he was the baby of the family. His doctor had him on a statin drug,
Oh,
like for years and
no.
years and years. He would ask me for raw milk and butter. He just, if we had a potluck, he wanted to eat my food because he knew it had butter and had fat in it, right?
He was craving
He
it.
was craving it. And I'd bring him a quart of fresh raw milk and he would just down it. And his wife would just, I could see it in her face. It was like, oh man, please no.
Oh, no.
She bought into the whole doctor idea that cholesterol caused heart disease and therefore we needed to avoid it. And she knew that full fat milk had a lot of cholesterol. Well, but his body craved it. And I think that God gives us that craving mechanism also that we crave something we need. Maybe it's salt,
Yes.
maybe it's fat, maybe it's water in the case of thirst. And we shouldn't be ignoring those signs.
Mhm.
So our friend eventually did die of a heart attack, but he came home from a prostate exam, I think, a colonoscopy.
Okay.
And as soon as he got home, he dropped dead of a heart attack. And I read very soon thereafter, I just came upon it. It wasn't something I was looking for, but I read about how colonoscopies sometimes cause heart attacks.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I never shared that with his wife or with anybody else because it was not going to make anything better. So I left it alone until now. I don't know if I've ever told anybody, but I did literally find an article from scientists, from doctors and researchers who said that colonoscopies sometimes cause heart attacks, and it's the mechanism of pressure into the colon that causes the heart to, well, go into arrhythmia or something. I don't remember specifically. Anyway, so he did die of a heart attack.
Wow.
But it was induced almost certainly by that colonoscopy that he had just had.
Right. I bet it was.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm thinking about a story of my own that I went to Mongolia last November. And the Mongolian people are known for the Mongolian empire expansion. They were a
Yeah.
conquering, strong people. And in that part of the world, hardly anything grows. So what was their diet? It was mostly the meat and the fat and the dairy products from the animals they had. They had yak, camels, horses, and I think some cattle as well. And so the plates, you wouldn't have believed it. And I guess some people would say it's a heart attack on a plate. That's what we used to be saying when we saw meat and fat. But now we know it's what God has given us to thrive on. If anyone in Mongolia ever tried to be a vegetarian, it would be nearly impossible. It would be
Yeah.
all imported stuff because what grows there is barely enough to sustain the animals that are grazing. And then they eat the
Yeah.
animals. They have yak milk tea and curds and whey and cheeses. And it was such a heavy diet, but it's cold there. So I knew
Yeah.
it worked for them. And we're not
Yeah.
saying every meal needs to be laden with these things, but chances are we need more fat in our diet rather than less. And when Dr. Price traveled the world, he found that fat was a good percentage of most every diet he visited, every indigenous people group that he visited. It was like,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 60 to 80% higher than the diet of his day in the United States. So I need to double check those numbers. All I have to do
Yeah.
is look at the healthy diets of traditional people groups brochure that the foundation puts out. But I do know this, that we need more fat, not less. And that fat will satisfy us, as we're saying. It will help with the structure of the cell membranes for intercellular communication, for your satisfaction level, and for your cognitive function. I mean, it's amazing. I honestly, for a little while, I think I tried to go low fat. Maybe I remember serving myself with the kids too. We'd have cereal for breakfast with 2% milk and maybe a few berries. And then I'd go to teach my exercise class and I'd feel my blood sugar dip. And I thought, well, I guess I just need to be grazing all the time. I guess that's my constitution. When I changed my diet to more protein and fat, more along the lines of the Wise Traditions diet, so I'd have normal things that God has given us, eggs, bacon, yogurt, and so forth, I could sail hours and hours without eating. So that told me something. And that was something I started paying attention to. That was one of the first switches I made with my diet, I think, was simply leaving the low fatty stuff and going to the real healthy And I would call them heart
Yeah.
healthy fats, saturated fats.
Yeah, because they are.
Yes,
They
yes.
are. So they satiate, they
Mhm.
provide energy, and they also provide the nutrients that our body needs for whole body function,
Yes.
brain health, coconut oil for Alzheimer's, for instance.
Mhm.
And the fat soluble activators, the true vitamin A.
Yes. So that reminds me of something you said earlier, and that is that if we eat foods without fat, the fat can't be the carrier to help us extract the nutrients. So I remember back
Yeah.
in the day, I don't know if people even still do this. People would order salads without the dressing.
Yeah.
And they thought that was healthy, but what it was doing, it was limiting how they could even get the nutrients in the spinach or lettuce or whatever they were having there. I actually don't
Yeah.
recommend eating all those things raw, but that's
Yeah.
another story. But the point is, you need the fat as a carrier, as a vehicle to get those. I guess that's why Dr. Price called them activators, right? Because they help you get the nutrients out of the food. So just eating food without the fat, you're missing something. You're missing a way of transporting the nutrients to your body and to
Yeah.
the cells where it's needed.
Very much so. And Scott says, he mentions new studies saying that statins' effectiveness has been overstated and may not necessarily work. And that has been known for decades.
But if you're curious about it and you're like, where do I get this information? I think we have an article on the Weston A. Price website, westonaprice.org. It's called The Dangers of Statin Drugs. And then I interviewed someone on statins as well. And this is a man who was a doctor who was in great shape, but he was told his cholesterol was too high. He needed to get on statins. And he was like, hold up a minute, let me do some research on this. And he found that by changing his lifestyle and his habits, he was able to change things without statins. So I really think statins do have more side effects than positive effects.
Yeah, they definitely do. And the side effects of statin drugs are actually really scary to me. I heard Dr. Dwayne Graveline speak 20 years ago at one of the early conferences for the Wise Traditions conferences that I went to. He talked about, he was a doctor, a NASA doctor actually. But he had a doctor that took care of him, and his doctor suggested he go on statins. And so he did. And he experienced total global amnesia, like fast.
Wow.
He went on the statins, and I don't know, a week or within 2 weeks, it was a very short period of time. He found himself wandering through town where he lived, not knowing where he was, why he was there, or even who he was.
Oh,
He
no.
elaborated, of course, more than that. And then he went off the statins and back on, and the same thing happened.
Tell me that he stayed off the statins after
He
that.
did. He
Okay.
did. He was one of the doctors who formed the organization Think, the International Cholesterol Skeptics, thinks.org, thinks with a C, not a K, thinks.org. Uffe Ravneskov is I believe, a Finnish or Norwegian doctor who is also one of the founding members, and he wrote the book Cholesterol Myths. It's an excellent book. I read it years ago. They have a lot of articles on their website, really good articles about the dangers of statins and the positives of saturated fat and cholesterol. Weston A. Price has drawn a lot from them in speaking and writing. The research that they have corroborates everything that we're saying.
Yes.
We need these foods. And I wanted to say too about Mongolia, and Mongolia made me think of Alaska and the Eskimos and the Yukon territories where Dr. Price visited. The colder the climate, the more fat people ate because they didn't have the other foods to begin with. The Eskimos could collect some wild berries, but they weren't growing fields of grain.
No.
They didn't have big vegetable gardens. They caught fish and whales and seals. And some of them had some animals for milk, depending on where they were, like reindeer.
Yes.
In colder climates, reindeer are common. I think they're beautiful. I haven't had reindeer milk yet. That's something I should look for. I've done camel milk, water buffalo milk, sheep's milk, goat's milk, cow's milk.
Let's try to get some reindeer milk for Christmas.
I think we should. We'll have to ask Amos Miller. Hey, can you just get a small herd of reindeer?
Yes.
We'd like some milk.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, in the colder climates, you need more fuel to keep your body warm. And, these people were living without insulated houses and
That's right.
furnaces. They were wearing layers of animal skins, but
Absolutely.
somehow they were living and thriving without all of that. But I was going to also add to the idea about statins causing problems. Certainly amnesia is a major problem, but dare I say, another scary thing to me would be physical function in a particular intimate way. And some people are going on statins in their 40s or 50s. And I'm like,
I had a friend on it when he was 35. I remember because we worked together and he said, Hilda, I don't know, I'm getting so forgetful. It must have been all the drugs I did in my 20s, but it was the statin drugs. I bet you anything.
yeah.
So yes, issues with cognitive function and joint pain. He
Yeah.
seemed like an old man, even though he was young, and he was only taking it because he had supposedly a family history of these issues.
Yeah.
But I think it bears close examination. And I know Stephanie Seneff's husband was told your cholesterol's high, you need to go on statins. And that's what set her and her husband down a road of questioning everything, I would say, and realizing that the medical industry is exactly that, profiting from sick people. They don't want you dead, but they also don't want you healthy. So something in between
Yeah.
is going to be very profitable for them. And I'm not speaking about specific people. You might have a brother who's a surgeon or a nephew who's a doctor. That's wonderful. I'm sure they're well intentioned, but the system as a whole is set up to say, you have this condition, you need this medication, and you're going to have to take it for the rest of your life. And so that's
Yeah.
not profiting your health. And it bears close examination, like I said, tapping into your intuition and your divine discernment to know, what should I do here? And then do some of this research yourself. We've suggested some books and some
Yeah.
podcasts to check out as
Yeah.
starters.
Another book that's good is Dr. Diane Schwartzbein's The Schwartzbein Principle, which is about
Oh.
diabetes. She's an endocrinologist. In her early days of working at the Mayo Clinic, she realized very quickly that the diet prescribed by the American Diabetic Association not only didn't work, but it kept people sick and contributed to make them sicker and sicker. Well, it's a constant diet of carbs, small amounts of carbs constantly, but you don't talk about fat and protein. It's carb, carb, carb to maintain a steady blood sugar. The best thing you can do to maintain a steady and good blood sugar level is fat.
Absolutely. That's what I learned. That was my experience.
Yeah.
When I was teaching exercise classes, I'd be like, oh, I feel like kind of faint and dizzy. I wasn't getting enough of that fat for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we need that. So there's an excellent book also that I just, I'm going to review both for God's Good Table and for the Weston A. Price Foundation, titled Real Food for Gestational Diabetes.
Oh.
It's written by a nutritionist, and I'm going to seek her out. I want to interview her as well. But she emphasizes the importance of fats and of real fats, traditional fats. I looked through the whole book, including the many, many, many citations, and Dr. Price isn't mentioned anywhere, but man, is it ever Weston A. Price all the way
That's
through.
funny.
She talks about traditional cultures and all of that, but she stresses the importance of high quality traditional fats.
You know who else wrote an amazing book is Nina Teicholz.
Yes.
She wrote The Big Fat Surprise. She was
Yeah.
just a journalist person going about her business. And then she was like, wait, what? Fat is good for you? I don't know. She had this big aha. So I've interviewed her on the podcast, and she wrote a tremendous book that people might want to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another good one. So it's not just, don't just take it from us.
No.
The Weston A. Price Foundation has a lot of good materials, including industrial fats and oils. This book is full of information, not book, it's brochure, and I have lots of things highlighted there. But this provides lots of information about what's wrong with the industrialized oils, the harm that they cause, and why we need to avoid them. Butter and ghee are like two of my favorite things, and bacon.
Oh my gosh, me too. I love those so much.
Yeah.
Butter and Bacon Club here.
Yep.
And ghee. And then this one, I mentioned this one earlier, The Timeless Principles of Healthy Traditional Diets. It kind of is a primer on the work of Dr. Price And there's a whole section here, the many roles of saturated fat. So if you're like, I'm not so sure, again, do some digging and you'll find, even just listen to your body. How do I
Yeah.
feel after I have some traditional fat with my meal? I think some people, you were talking about Alzheimer's earlier,
Yeah.
some people to improve their cognitive function would have like a spoonful of coconut oil with every meal. I mean, can you imagine? That actually sounds like so much I wouldn't want to even want to eat my meal. But it's so satisfying and so rich and so full of nutrients itself.
Mhm.
Whereas the vegetable oils, I don't think they have any nutrients whatsoever.
They don't. As you mentioned earlier, they are rancid and unpalatable, but they've been deodorized and colorized,
Yes.
because by the time they go through the entire factory process, and we're starting with oils, seed oils that were never consumed, they were never considered
No.
food ever, but they began to replace traditional fats in the late 1800s with the advent of Crisco and the hydrogenation of fats, which, by the way, creates trans fatty acids, which are acids that harm on many levels. But in replacing traditional fats, we've seen this cavalcade of problems. But I lost my train of thought.
No, that's okay. I was just thinking about how
I
another thing
need
that
more
happens.
fat.
Another thing that happens when they're doing the process of deodorizing and colorizing and ultra, extrusion process of getting any kind of oil out of these strange little seeds, and calling it
Yeah.
a healthy fat, is it creates free radicals, which means it can cause cancer. The
Yeah.
very thing that they say that these things are ostensibly supposed to save us from, when actually what protects us from cancer is exactly the nutrients that you find in traditional saturated fats.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, that's totally true. Um, Connie says that her mother used to cook with lard until the doctor told her that the reason for my dad's heart condition was because of fat. Not true.
Mm-mm.
Um, and she's mentioned she's Latino, and
Ah.
you have,
I have
I,
Latino heritage. My mom's from Mexico. My dad is from Cuba. And trust me, on the island of Cuba, they love their pork. They love their lard. They love their saturated fats. And
yeah.
also in Mexico, I have memories as a child of making flour tortillas with lard. And of course,
Mm,
lard naturally has vitamin D in it, and everyone's so vitamin D deficient. That's a mood booster on top of being not
yeah.
even just actually a vitamin, but a hormone that oversees a lot of the functions in our body. So
Yeah.
I would say, carefully examine what the medical conventional system is telling you. And
Yeah.
I don't even know if, this platform is going to let us stay up if we say such things, but explore the role of saturated fat in your life and think twice
Yeah.
about any advice you're getting that might be causing you health concerns in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always feel like no matter what, when in doubt, whatever God gave us has got to be good.
I agree. He wouldn't be giving, even the Bible says he wouldn't give you a snake when you ask for fish, or
Mm,
bread. He's going to give you
yeah.
what's good. So, yes, what he's given us, the simplest single ingredient foods and fats are the ones that are going to do us the best.
Yeah. Liz, thank you for that. That's good to know. And you understand that. Liz is a practitioner, a nurse practitioner, and she says that everything seems driven by the pharmaceutical and insurance industries. I noticed years ago when I went to Hershey Medical Center to visit someone who was ill that I think it was Kaiser Permanente was the name on the building, or it was a pharmaceutical company, something, and another hospital, the same thing. It's the pharmaceutical companies and the insurance companies that are funding our medical schools. So
Mhm.
don't ever think that they have our best interest at heart. They have their bottom line as the focal point. And doctors anymore don't go to school and learn about nutrition. They get only at most a few hours of nutrition,
If that.
and it's watered down nutrition. It's not accurate nutrition. They're taught about drugs and procedures.
It's reactive rather than proactive.
Yeah, exactly. It's really scary, frightening, and
Mhm. That's why we need to take our health into our own hands. And
yeah,
again, listen to your body. What's satisfying you? What's doing you good? There's a reason you're eating a whole bag of chips, because
yeah,
there's that fake oil in there. It doesn't satisfy, it doesn't do any of the right things, and it really runs right through you. But
yeah,
substitute that with something that you make in duck fat or I'm thinking of duck
Oh,
fat
I love
fries right
duck
now.
fat fries.
Yes, so
I
delicious.
do. But I
Ah,
was so disappointed when last year in Knoxville, we all went out to dinner and it was a cool restaurant, kind of a farm to table restaurant, and
yeah.
they had on the menu duck fries. I don't eat French fries because I can't usually handle the carbs and I don't want the fat. But duck fries, we all ordered duck fries. And then later, I looked on the menu online and it said drizzled with duck fat. So they were still
Oh.
fried in bad
Well,
oil.
you know why? Because it's cheaper.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure they
a
wanted
lot
to do the
cheaper.
right thing, but it's more expensive to use the saturated fats.
Yeah,
McDonald's used to fry their potatoes in tallow,
yeah,
but then I think someone made a big whatever
yeah,
kerfuffle in the 70s or 80s and they switched it over to who knows what it is now, but I wouldn't touch that
yeah.
with a 10-foot pole.
Yep, me neither. Me neither. One other good fat that I will bring up is cod liver oil. And
Ah,
we did a segment a couple weeks ago about supplements, and my thing was you get your nutrients from food. And one food supplement that I highly suggest is Green Pasture Products fermented cod liver oil. That is a traditional fat, and I swear by it. I take it every single day.
yeah.
So I'll just throw that out there. That's a great fat to be including in your daily diet. I take it by the spoonful, but
So good, absolutely. Dr.
yeah.
Price called cod liver oil a food, not even a
Hmm.
supplement. He's like, this counts in the food category. He could see
Yeah.
the good it was bringing people as well back in the
Especially
day.
when combined with butter oil. And
Yes.
Green Pasture Products has fermented cod liver oil combined with butter oil. Fermented because it's a traditional way of the cod livers releasing the oil. And in
Mhm.
the fermentation process of the livers, a greater range of vitamin D is created, and all within the same proper range of true vitamin A to vitamin D. And again, you'll hear me say it a million times, you don't get vitamin A from a carrot. But true fully formed vitamin A only comes from animal foods.
Mhm.
So yes, he found that the two work synergistically. And I like to just take ghee mixed with coconut oil every day. I don't do it with my
Ah,
meals though. I just
interesting.
take it and chase it with my Irish breakfast tea. Um, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
Wow. Well, I just want to remind you, as Maureen did, I'm just reiterating that what God has given us is the best, that humankind has been enjoying animal products and tropical oils and dairy products for as long as we've been on the earth. And so it's like, let's keep
yeah,
enjoying those things unashamedly, unreservedly,
yeah.
without guilt, knowing that it's satisfying and really helping the function of our heart and our mind and our bodies on multiple levels. If God gave it to us, it's good.
Absolutely. Acts chapter 10. When last week I said First Peter 3. No, I instantly thought, oh, wrong. Acts chapter 10, when God lowered the sheet of unclean animals to Peter, and
Mm.
he's three times, and he said, um,
Don't
do
call
not
what I've
call unclean what I call clean.
yes,
And that
yes.
includes lard.
That's the Maureen version.
Yeah.
But yes, that's right. It does include lard.
It's a wonderful
Absolutely.
thing, but so is schmaltz and tallow
Mhm.
and always butter. Butter, and more
Yes.
butter.
Mm,
So
love it.
we've had a fantastic whoops, sorry about that, everybody.
Earthquake.
We've had a great conversation, and Hilda, I'm really grateful that you popped on with me.
Me
This
too.
was spontaneous.
Oh, I'm so happy to be with
Yeah.
you. I love what Maureen is doing. If you're part of God's good table, you're blessed. So,
Oh, well,
and you be blessed too.
thank you. We are blessed. We are
Yes.
blessed by you and all of you. So thank you. And two quick notes. We're working on several big, exciting events for 2024. First of all, we have the God Given Food as Medicine Conference in Southern Virginia in a little town called Wirtz. It's happening
Ah.
April 19th through 21st, the 21st being worship on Sunday morning.
Mm.
And we'll have a Friday all day track about prevention, Saturday healing using God given foods and God given medicine. We're also going to do an offshoot for healthy pregnancies and healthy babies.
Wonderful.
So that was an important thing that we wanted to address. And then we're working on a really fabulous, luxurious retreat in the extreme northeast of Maine at my most favorite place on the earth besides home or the beach. Okay, home does home takes first place, but um, we're putting together, along with Sophie Eng, the author of Nourished Asian Kitchen. She's a good friend of ours, and we're putting on this retreat together. It's going to be a luxurious, relaxing, and fun time filled with good food and whale watching and local seafood.
What time of
fresh
year will that be?
June. It will be late June.
Nice.
So we're still working on the dates, but we're putting that together. It's really exciting. We're so pumped about it. So look for that. And we're also working on a couple of other things, including a God-given food as medicine conference in Kansas City, Kansas, but we don't have that firm yet. But we've got some things in the pipeline. So just keep it up here and we'll provide more details later. Next week, you'll have Aaron and I, and Hilda, you'll like this.
Yeah.
Aaron and I will be together in St. Augustine at her house working for a few days.
Nice.
And we decided that it would be fun to take the questions from the panel discussion from Wise Traditions, from the Homemakers panel, which I was part of and Hilda emceed.
Yes.
And it's is it up on the podcast yet?
Not yet, but it will be.
Okay.
Oh, it was a wonderful panel with Maureen, Sally Fallon Morell, Hillary Boynton, and Christine Muldoon.
Yeah.
And it was like building a Wise Traditions home is what we called it. But the questions were taken from the most frequently asked questions to each of you individually. So yeah, I'm sure that'd be great for you to bring to your audience next week. Yeah.
I know that all four of us on that panel could have just gone on and on and on. And so Aaron and I talked about it and we thought it would be fun to take the questions and just go over them from our point of view.
Yes.
So we're going to do that next week.
Good. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you'll get an exclusive with Maureen and then look for the Wise Traditions podcast so you can hear the whole panel, which was lovely too.
Yeah. And we'll let everyone know when that is out.
For sure.
We'll be watching for that. And otherwise we have a couple people coming on soon to talk about salt, the importance of salt and grains, heirloom grains, and why they're important and how they should be prepared. We're covering all the basics as solidly as we possibly can. So stay tuned. And next week at 3:00, Aaron and I and those questions. And please ask questions. We want to answer them. So thank you so very much for being here, and leaving comments. And please like and subscribe. We've got to say that. But please do like and subscribe. We appreciate it. Thank you very much and have a great rest of your week.
See you all.
Okay.